once again from the wastelands of the internet I have come. It is I, the Nomad, coming to you live to bring you news of the week. Well, more or less, news of the week as things continue to spiral out of control. All right, I see you there, Mr. Barkley. Welcome. Just to let you know, it's going to be a Trump-heavy episode today. I don't have any co-hosts at the moment. So I am out of control. I am free to do whatever I need and do things as I see fit. But we'll start with news. There will be there will be some good news. There will be some good news from your point of view, Matt. I guarantee. But we're going to start with this. Terrorist march. Shameless AK-47 wielding Hamas terrorists come out of hiding to throw a parade on the dawn of the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release. Hamas terrorists have been coming out of hiding to celebrate the new ceasefire agreed with Israel. Shocking pictures show the shameless gun-wielding fighters waving a green banner of the terror group and the crest of its armed militia. And as you can see, here are the pictures. All right. Pictures show men in baklavas and camo fatigues waving their guns as they travel through various towns in the Gaza Strip. It comes after a 15-month war which saw Israel attempting to destroy the terrorist group as they cowardly hunkered down. And that's the word. Okay. Why am I showing you this? Tens of thousands of quote-unquote Palestinian civilians, and Hamas, the ones who caused all this, are celebrating and dancing in the streets as the civilians celebrate with them. Town to town, allowing them to go town to town. The problem isn't Hamas. The problem is the Palestinians who are willing to celebrate Hamas. But are they dancing on the ceiling? This is why B-52s are going to be necessary, folks. This is why, and I'm not happy about this. This is why the tragic reality of that region. You've got to overturn the mentality of the people to where this kind of crap isn't acceptable. That these kind of murdering thugs aren't allowed to take over and are removed when they do take over sections. Because you can't stop this kind of terrorist activity 100%. But what you can do is when it gets too large, you simply get rid of it as a people. It's not easy. But there's no one in the Middle East trying to get rid of Hamas. There's a ceasefire deal, sure. And 4 Israeli women were just released. In the coming days, we will find out just how badly they were brutalized. And they're going to have been brutalized, folks. These were Israeli female soldiers. Meanwhile, 200 murderous frickin' Hamas thugs were also released by the Israelis for 4 of their women. And somehow, you think things are going to be going back to normal? Well, Trump promised that that the fighting in the Ukraine would stop. In day one, he could stop it in day one, and that's all true. He did promise that, and it hasn't stopped. And anybody who thought that he could stop it in 24 hours has to understand, well, the man is human. And he was wrong. And this conflict is bad, but it's going to stop. One way or another, it's going to stop. And fairly soon. Why? Because Trump's not going to ship them any more weapons. Well, they had the last big influx because of Biden. Biden made sure of that. But after that, nope. Which leads us into this story. Denmark in crisis mode after a horrendous phone call from Trump demanding to buy Greenland. The U.S. president spoke to Danish premier for 45 minutes last week and made clear he wanted to place Greenland under American control. Denmark is in crisis mode after Donald Trump made a direct play for Greenland in a horrendous phone call with the country's prime minister. Don't you love how they said it? A horrendous phone call? The president spoke to Mette Frederiksen, the Danish premier, for 45 minutes last week and made clear he wanted to place Greenland under American control. The autonomous Arctic territory has been owned by Denmark since 1814, but Mr. Trump thinks it would be a valuable asset in the United States strategic competition against Russia and China. Ms. Fredrickson, all right, told him in their call last week that despite his big interest in Greenland, all right, Greenland was not for sale, the Financial Times reported. Mr. Trump then became aggressive, according to the newspaper, and threatened to impose tariffs on Denmark unless Greenland was sold to the United States. The call came after Trump refused to rule out using military force to take Greenland in a press conference on January 7th, arguing that it's a matter of national security that the United States gain control of the Arctic base. Denmark has repeatedly ruled out, all right, selling Greenland and argues that the territory's 57,000 residents should be allowed to decide their nation's political future. A source briefed on the call told the Financial Times that the phone call was horrendous, while another said that Trump was very firm. Denmark was now in crisis over the dispute, fearing massive tariffs on exports to one of its largest trading partners, said another person briefed on the conversation. The intent was clear. They want it. The Danes are now in crisis mode, they said. Ms. Frederiksen, who has held crisis talks with major Danish companies in recent days, has also described the U.S. as Denmark's most important and closest ally. No, we're not your closest, okay, and we probably are their most important ally, okay, but we're not their closest because they haven't been acting as an ally. They haven't been living up to their NATO commitments in any way, shape, or form. And this is the problem with these people. Meanwhile, this meme, I gotta admit this, it could be. He'll get around to NATO sooner or later. It's real easy. We need to leave NATO. We need to leave NATO. NATO has proven itself to be feckless. NATO has proven itself to be nothing. No, I had a Twitter discussion. I shouldn't say I had a Twitter discussion because it really wasn't much of a discussion. But I did respond to a guy who was Danish, and he said, "Look, we need to cut loose Greenland." I understand. He goes, "I understand people want to keep it from a, pride perspective, but it serves us nothing. It is a drain on our economy. Why are we even keeping it? Let the Americans have it." And then they said the conversations, of course, with the Danish, uber nationalists. We can't do that. The United States is just trying to be a bully. You can't do this. So what if they so a person made a simple thing? What if America just seizes it with its military? Well, there's NATO. There is no NATO without the U.S. Literally. NATO had a chance to prove itself in the ongoing Ukrainian-Russian crisis. And I don't mean standing up in the sense of pushing those Ruskies back across the border and bombing them back in their Stone Age. Right? That's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is they had certain commitments that for multiple decades they have not been living up to. None of the NATO nations, with the exception of Britain, have been living up to their NATO commitments. And even Britain reduced their input. Mainly because, you know what? The rest of the nations aren't putting in there. Why are we sitting up there putting so much more than everybody else percentage-wise? So they went down to their actual levels. Their actual commitment levels. Which is what Britain want to do. And I can't argue that. Greetings, Maddie. By the way, if you want to come in, please come in. Just go in Discord. You can be there. I await your arrival if you wish to come in. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Hey, pretty good.
Hey, Vaj. I'm trying to see if Maddie wants to come in.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be but now I'm being moderated. Maddie just said there she had to turn down the volume because I was in rant mode. Let's see here.
Well, I mean, there's so much to rant about now, but things are actually getting done, MC.
Yeah. The things are arriving. I have Maddie stole the phone. Um, the uh, the thing about Greenland, okay, Greenland is placed in such a place that the United States, from a security standpoint, to compete with the Arctic, it's it, it's necessary. All right. Is it as necessary as Trump is making it out to be? It wouldn't be if NATO was living up to their commitments, specifically America's hat, which also hasn't been living up to its military commitments either. But NATO had a chance
Yeah.
to provide weapons to the Ukrainians to show its muscle. But what was it that they what did they do? They shipped a lot of old crap, a lot of old decrepit crap over to the Ukrainians, which the Ukrainians were using to decent effect. You can't deny that. All right, the Ukrainians are fighting for their lives essentially. But what most of us didn't realize at the time, when they were giving them all this stuff, when NATO was giving them their their commitment, showing up with their weapon systems, was the fact that decrepit crap that they were giving them in comparison to our top line stuff was their top line shit. They haven't been modernizing their military in any way, shape, or form. Well, what about the Leopards? What about the Leopards, Nomad? What about the Leopards? Oh, the Leopards roaming the battlefield along with American M1s? The answer is no. What's more is this has turned into a drone war. All right? And Britain has given them anti-drone capability, the Ukrainians, anti-drone capability, and they're using it effectively. But it's a different type of all-around warfare that none of the Soviet-style militaries, and that is also the Ukrainians, are prepared to wage. It's one of the reasons why, to be honest, even though the Ukrainians have used the weapons that we've given them and are grateful for them and have done a lot of damage, they could have done a lot more. They could have done a lot more, folks, but they just hadn't understood it. So, Vash, you ready to go to something that is a plus?
Okay.
Ah,
There. I've been fighting with my mute button for a little while.
sounds like the mute button was winning, to be honest, until just now.
Yeah, whenever you click the button and then it just it registers that you clicked it twice.
Hundreds of illegal migrants arrested and hundreds more flown out of the U.S. by the U.S. military, says the White House.
That was 480
Yeah.
was the count from the last time I've heard.
Hundreds of illegal immigrant criminals in the United States were arrested Thursday, and hundreds of others were flown out of the country on military aircraft as Trump's proposed mass deportation operation got underway. In a post on X Thursday night, the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt, said the Trump administration arrested 538 illegal immigrant criminals, including a suspected terrorist, 4 members of the Tren de Aragua gang, and several illegals convicted of sex crimes against minors. The Tren de la Aragua, I'm not trying to butcher the name, I just can't pronounce it, is a violent gang that was started in Venezuela and has now spread into the U.S. It has become something of a flashpoint during the presidential campaign. In addition to that story, we have this one. Breaking news! Breaking news from NBC News! Mexico refused to accept a deportation flight. Mexico denied a U.S. military plane access to land Thursday, at least temporarily frustrating the Trump administration's plans to deport immigrants to the country, according to 2 U.S. defense officials and a third person familiar with the situation. 2 Guatemala-bound C-17s carrying about 80 people apiece flew deportees out of the U.S. Thursday night, the sources said. The third flight, slotted for Mexico, never took off. It was not immediately clear why Mexico blocked the flight, but tensions between the U.S. and Mexico, neighbors and longtime allies. Really? Mexico's been an ally of the U.S. How so? But anyway, we'll go on. All right. All right. Tensions have arisen since President Trump won the November election. He has threatened to slap a 25% across the board tariff on Mexico in retaliation for migrants crossing the border the country's share, but he has not yet put them into effect. The White House said in a text message the flights thing was an administrative issue and was quickly rectified. Okay, first of all, a lot of people are saying now, these flights cost hundreds and like $500,000, $800,000 for these 80 migrants. No, it's not that. Okay, you're using Washington mathematics there, right? See, they include not the flight, just the flight itself. Okay, and the cost of the flight. They include the administrative crap of grabbing them, detaining them, doing the paperwork, all the administrative other crap that goes on back in the background to get rid of these guys. And you're right, Mr. Barkley, it's not about the money anyway. Although it's about the money with the Mexicans. Mexico, I can tell you right now, Mexico is playing a very dangerous game. Do you disagree? Or do you agree? Vash, what's your opinion?
Personally, I say that we need to take over Panama, and then we need to establish a military base on Panama, and then I think that Mexico will
We have several
be a
military
lot more
bases on
polite.
Panama, by the way.
Another one.
Are you saying all of Panama should be a military base? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how?
Just make the whole fucking thing a military installation.
Did you know? Do you understand how Panama came into being?
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt came down like, "What's up, bitches?"
I don't know. I
You
don't
know,
know
he
if it
had
was
the
quite like
brilliant
that.
strategy of he had the brilliant strategy of machine guns on horseback.
Back at the time, the horseless carriage was just a new thing that was just coming into being. All right, to be honest. All right, but yes, you are correct. Teddy Roosevelt went in there. Now here's the thing. Okay, the Panama Canal started. Okay, with a first of all, that area of the isthmus was claimed by Colombia. Okay, Colombia had made a deal with a French company to build the canal. The French company bailed on the project because it was too hard. There was too many difficulties. They just couldn't get it done. But see, the canal was something that the United States had been bristling for a long time. All right. I mean, you got to understand it. People have wanted that canal for a long, long, long time. Okay. Why? Because it cut traffic time. All right. From the Pacific to the Atlantic, because you could go through the middle now instead of trying to go around those edges. All right. To the Cape of Good Hope or the Cape Horn. Right. Both of which the seas are not not the kindest. Let's leave it at that, right? So you end up in that situation, right, where people have been begging for a canal there for a long time. When the French company failed, okay, a few decades, about a decade or so, passes, and the United States, there are certain things that happen within the United States that make the the failure now viable technologically, right? If you just have the willpower. So the United States under Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, offers to buy that land from Colombia and say, okay, we want to build the canal here. We want to buy the land, all right, so that we can build the canal. The Colombians said, go F yourself. Go jump off a cliff. Right?
And then they said, "We'll take it then."
Well, kind of in a way, he's. But Roosevelt said, "Look, we got we'll buy it for $25 million. You got to remember, this is $25 million back in, 1901. Okay, the early 1900s, and that time frame. So $25 million was a huge chunk of money. The Colombians still said, go F yourself. So he said, okay, let me show you how this is going to happen. And so he funded, I kind of use that in air quotes, a revolution. The Panamanians rose up against the Colombians, defeated them, and then made a deal with Roosevelt. Okay. Of which we still paid Colombia $25 million later on. But yes, we fomented a quote unquote revolution, and then we built the canal. Now, one of the things that made the canal possible, the building of the canal possible, was a vaccine against yellow fever. Yellow fever had been devastating down in that region. The fact that we now had medicine for it made this a viable possibility now. Okay, so we built the canal. Okay, we built the canal for the ships of the day and the ships of tomorrow. The problem with the ships of tomorrow was people wildly underestimated how big the ships of tomorrow would get. Okay? When I say wildly underestimated it, by the 1940s, some of our ships could not sail through the Panama Canal. Specifically, our largest battleships and our largest aircraft carriers. But from a military standpoint, we could still move cruisers, destroyers, a lot of other weapon systems, all right, through the canal, which was one of the reasons why Japan was actually had a plan to bomb them. But that's how the Panama Canal came into being. All right. For those who don't know, now the Panamanians, the canal itself, what was considered the canal zone, was U.S. territory. It was sold to the U.S. to be U.S. territory forever. Then the United States got stupid, elected a Georgian to the White House, and the peanut farmers said, "Oh, we're going to do this as a grand gesture. We're going to give the Panama Canal back to the Panamanians, with assurances from the Panamanians that Americans would still control the canal as necessary." And of course, history continues, right? You end up with Noriega, where Noriega, a drug lord, right, who the American authorities said, this guy's a bad guy. Noriega said, yeah, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to close the canal to U.S. traffic. And Noriega found his way into a U.S. prison as we sent the Rangers down there to seize the canal. Anybody remember that? Anybody remember Manuel Noriega? Panamaniacs, great cartoon.
The Panamaniacs. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong thing.
All right, but Manuel Noriega, all right, who was using his obviously ties with the United States to flood the country with drugs, decided he was going to play hardball. And what are you going to do about it? Well, he found out. He effed around, found out, ended up in a U.S. prison because we went down there with the U.S. Rangers and basically seized the canal. We then turned it back over once again to the Panamanians, who then promptly sold the management of the canal to quote unquote communist Chinese firms, which is one of the reasons why Trump is like, we need to go back there and take it
again. Yep.
Meanwhile, back in the United States, a mare rages as a U.S. military vet nabbed in Trump's much-hyped ICE raids. Just 3 days into President Trump's promised mass deportation operation, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers have already arrested a U.S. citizen who served in the military. Okay. About 10 to 12 ICE agents raided a Newark, New Jersey seafood wholesaler and restaurant on Thursday and arrested 3 people, including a Puerto Rican warehouse manager and Ocean Food Depot owner, Luis Yanoto, told the PIX11 News. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. I asked what documentation they are looking for, and they said it was a license or a passport. I thought, who walks around with a passport? Okay.
Yeah, but you walk around with a license.
Okay, for people who don't understand this, because it's an interesting question. Who walks around with a passport? Every foreigner in this country, if you are not a U.S. citizen, is required to carry with them at all times their passport. Did you know that? Until they get a green card, which then they have to carry the green card with them at all times, they have to maintain that passport. So yeah, who walks around with a passport? It better be every freaking foreigner in this country. Just putting it out there. One of the guys was a military veteran, and the way he looked to me was because he was Hispanic. He was Puerto Rican and a manager of our warehouse. It looked to me like they were specifically going after certain kinds of people, not every kind, because they did not ask for documentation for any or my American workers, Portuguese workers, or white workers. The ICE officers also didn't have a warrant in plain violation of the Fourth Amendment. New York Mayor Ross J. Baraka said in a statement, "Hey, guess what, dude? If you're here illegally, they don't need a warrant to grab you. They don't need a warrant to go into a place necessarily, especially when it's a restaurant open to the public, moron." You see, people sit up there and make these comments. Oh, he has to have a warrant. This is illegal. No, it's not illegal. Of course, Cory Booker, the New Jersey Democrat, said, "I was deeply concerned." Now, let's talk about the American who was arrested. He was, quote unquote, the warehouse manager, right? Now, can you understand why he could be arrested? Could you think of a reason? All right, aside from that he was Hispanic, that he was possibly arrested? Dash?
Maybe he didn't have proper documentation.
Or maybe they were looking for him for intentionally hiring illegal aliens in violation of the law.
That too.
As the quote unquote warehouse manager and the guy in charge, hey Jacob, you would think that they would be a little bit cognizant of that, right? That the guy who does the hiring and firing, the guy in charge of the warehouse, might be on the hook for violating U.S. law. Oh, but see, we're not going to include that in the story. Just, just kind of ignore it. It's just, why would a U.S. citizen be arrested? Oh, I don't know, because he's a criminal. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. In the meantime, let's get on to the next story. You ready for the next story, Vash? By the way, Vash, you can follow the stories. I am doing this in Discord.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got it shared.
Oh, do you? Okay. On to the next story.
Yeah.
Trump administration directs all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion staff to be put on leave and soon to be let go.
Yes, please.
President Donald Trump's administration has moved to end affirmative action in the federal contracting and directed that all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion staff be put on paid leave and eventually laid off. The move Tuesday follows an executive order Trump signed on his first day, ordering a sweeping dismantling of the federal government's diversity and inclusion programs that could touch everything from anti-bias training to funding for minority farmers and homeowners. Trump has called the programs discrimination and insisted on restoring strictly merit-based hiring. The executive order on affirmative action revokes an order issued by President Lyndon Johnson and curtails DEI programs by federal contractors and grant recipients. It's one of the key tools utilized by the Biden administration to promote DEI programs across the private sector, pushing their use of federal contractors to now eradicate them. Tell them to tell them to apply to Expand Express. All right, this is long, long overdue. These people have been out of control since the inception of this nonsense. These were the idiots that came up with the freaking stupid statement of, well, if you're black, you can't be a racist. Did you know that? That it was federal government policy that if you're black, you couldn't be racist? And they pushed that nonsense through all of their programs. Okay? Especially in the military, where they would have these once a year little training sessions where they would tell all the black people, you can't be racist against your white colleagues. And they did. These things were ridiculous. And this was back in the 80s when I was in the military. That's how bad it was then. It got worse when they started playing let's play the LGBTQ cards. Where every freaking minority was set up there catered to. The military, something that functions on uniformity, was no longer uniform.
Well, I mean, I remembered whenever these people went into the military and they had like their TikToks where they were like, I'm a soldier, I can do this shit, I can do. And then the moment that we were like, yeah, we're going to have to station you over here, I can't do this. Why are they sending me over there? I'm gonna get shot. And it's like, you're a soldier. I don't want to be a soldier no more.
Did you see the ones where excuse me, a bit of sniffles here. Freaking sun sneeze. Where the female Air Force cadets, or not, I shouldn't say cadets, but your Air Force airmen, after basic training, were getting assigned to different places, and this one lady got assigned to Minot, North Dakota. Right, and then she started freaking out. I got down there, Minot, North Dakota. Well, I think Minot is North Dakota. North Dakota. It's one of the Dakotas. It's Minot Air Force Base. Right, where the B-2s are basically one of the places where the B-2s are staged from.
Yeah.
And you just look at these idiots and you're like, what the heck? You don't need to be here. My problem with the military when it comes to you want to play the game of standards, all right? I know a lot of people say, oh, women can do it. No, they can't. All these jobs that you got going on, right? Well, women can do them. There are jobs women can do in the military. And believe it or not, I'm not against women in the military. I'm against intermixed units. Always have been. Because it is a disciplinary problem waiting to explode. It is. You mix male and female units together, and mix females in military units, and what happens in everywhere it is, every integrated military unit runs into the problem of fraternization, where somebody is sleeping with somebody else and other people in the unit take that personally because they want to be sleeping with that other person within the unit as well. So unit cohesion is always affected. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it's so drastic, the world's coming to an end. No, that's not what I mean. Okay? But unit cohesion is affected negatively. Is it significant? That's debatable. It's significant enough that you're wasting time on it. It's a distraction that doesn't need to be there. And I'm going to tell you another story. When I came in, we were expected, all right, to physically be able to lift 60 pounds over our heads. 60 pounds. Okay? Now, for those who have never done it, okay, it's not an insignificant amount of weight, but it's easily doable by men. Okay? While I was in the military, that single person lift over your head requirement went from being a single person to a quote unquote two person or a 2-man lift, all right, to a 3-person lift. Now, why was that? Oh, because people are getting injured lifting those things. Yeah, who's getting injured? Was it the men? No, of course not. Who is struggling with lifting that kind of weight over their head? You get that woman out there who's she's small, she's petite, cute as a button, and you hand her 60 pounds and watch her struggle because she's 98 pounds wet, all right, to even get it into her hands, and you say, oh, but she's fully qualified for the position that she's in. This is reality. I'm going to talk about things that I saw while I was in the military. No, I was not in a combat role. I was in military intelligence. But you see things happening all the time. For example, a pallet, all right, with reams of paper on them come in, and those pallets of that paper have to be distributed. All right, taken off, put on carts, and taken to the various areas. All right, just manual kind of labor stuff that needs to happen for people, right? You know who was never at the pallet lifting the boxes of reams of paper, all right, to take over to the copy areas or the administrative areas? You know who was never doing that? Women. Why? Because you needed to get it done. You could assign a couple of women to do it, sure. Or you could assign one guy to sit up there and move the pallets around there and expect him to get it done. Does it affect readiness? Really? Minorly, but it's an effect. It does exist. Does that mean that women can't fight in the military? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that there are roles? Go on.
This just shows that MC is clearly a misogynist.
I'm not a misogynist. It's called reality. Right? Were there women that were physically capable to lift boxes like that in the military? Yeah, there were a few. I encountered them. They are, there are people who are big. I know one woman who was a college level butterfly swimmer. Right? If you ever seen a butterfly swimmer, one of the things that you first notice is their shoulders are huge. Right?
Oh yeah.
So physically,
as a person who used to be a part of a swim team and who does have that,
right? Those shoulders muscles
I feel a bit called out, MC.
What was that?
I feel a bit called out, MC.
Do you?
I feel a little bit called out.
Are your feelings stressed?
He picked on He picked on like the one sport that I was a part of.
Do you feel abused? But no. But she was able to physically do all the things that were required from a physical standpoint of the men that were around them. But she was only one of the women. All right, in a whole within the rest of the unit. All right, she was only the only one, and we had dozens of women in various roles, right? But she was the only one who physically could do these kind of things. I even tried to explain to a friend of mine. She happened to be female. I'm just gonna so you understand. All right. I explained to her as like, look, if I sit up there and have to tell you to go work on a specific piece of equipment, in this case it was a large tape recorder, right? And I tell you, go out there, get that tape recorder, bring it in here, realign it, and put it back out on the shelf, right? She was like, yeah. I said, can you do that alone? Can you lift that up by yourself? Can you unscrew it and need this? She goes, no, I'll need help. I don't have to do that with another man. Because a man can sit up there and physically do it himself. Do you see the difference?
Or he'll figure it out.
Right? Well, it's not. Women will figure it out too if they're the only ones around. One of the things that they'll do is they'll figure it out a woman's way, which is bat their eyes toward a guy that's nearby, and he'll help her. And that does happen. Okay, that's another aspect of things.
I did this at the last workplace that I was at. This chick, like, she hates me. Okay, she hated me, and
And you're right,
this was
James.
before I did. But whenever she started asking me to grab things from tall places, I said, "Hold on, I'll be right back." And I popped open a step ladder for her and then walked off. Well, to me, that's the definition of equity.
Well,
I gave you a step ladder so that way you will not be hindered by,
being forced to
your height.
ask other people to do your job. No, but
There you
the
go.
thing is,
You can now reach the tall things. And
the
they're like, but
term.
it takes so long to move it. That's not my problem.
Yeah, James is right. If they can make the cut, it isn't a problem, and that's the issue. And the other problem with making the cut is even if they're physically capable of doing everything, are they mentally prepared for it? Some women are, some women aren't. So you end up in a situation where, let's say, you have a woman going through ranger school. Are there were there are there women in the world that could have gone through the ranger school back in the 1980s, right, when we didn't allow women in combat roles? The answer to that is
There,
yeah, there probably was, but they're few and very few and far between, okay, that can make that cut. So when they sit up there and did open it up and then started letting quote unquote women go through these schools, one of the things they immediately did is they had to change the school to allow women to enough women to make the cut. Because the abuse, which is verbal, it's physical, it's meant to be stressful, all right? Even when
but
there
it's
was a
not
woman who could
supposed
handle
to
the
be.
physical part of it, too many of those women still couldn't make the mental, go through the mental gymnastics of surviving
But it's not supposed to be that stressful, MC.
it. As stressful as what, bullets flying at them in a combat situation? Just reiterating a comment that I made.
Well, we need to teach the guns not to shoot bullets, okay?
Yeah, okay. Mad would be the most hyped up and white pilled of all of us today. Anyway, on to the next story. Bloomberg charity to cover UN funds revoked with a U.S. Paris Accord agreement withdrawal. A businessman and former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg said this week that his philanthropic foundation will contribute the U.S.'s financial obligations under the Paris Climate Agreement to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC, after President Trump announced that he would withdraw the U.S. from the agreement. In a statement Wednesday through Bloomberg Philanthropies, Bloomberg said the organization will cover the U.S.'s funding gap and its reporting requirements for planet warming emissions.
I gotta go.
All right, later, Bash. I understand. Really? So Bloomberg thinks that it can sit up there and oh, Bobby. Bloomberg thinks that he can sit up there and on his own cover the U.S.'s funding gap. The announcement does not specify the dollar amount of the organization will contribute, but it committed about $15 million to the UNFCCC between 2017 and 2020 after Trump announced the withdrawal of the U.S. from the agreement in his first term. The U.S. ordinarily pays about a fifth of the UNFCCC budget, which amounted to $7.5 million, all right, in 2024. Oh, so you think you're only going to be paying $7.5 million, and you think that you're going to live up to all the reporting requirements. All right, one of the first things that I would do with Mr. Bloomberg's agency is I would ban them from any data being given to them from the U.S. public utilities firms and things like that. So let's see you meet those reporting requirements without the U.S. government money, which has been collating all that data. All right, also being attributed with that. While government funding remains essential to our missions, contributions like these are vital, all right, in enabling the UN Climate Change Secretariat to support countries in fulfilling their commitments under the Paris Agreement and a low emissions, resilient, and safer future for everyone, said Simon Steele, the UNFCCC Executive Secretary, in a statement. Go F yourselves. If Bloomberg wants to fund this, then why should our treasury ever fund any of this anyway? If Bloomberg sees a need for it and he wants to use his money to do this, fine, let him. It doesn't have to come from the U.S. government then. What you just sit up there and said is my taxes don't need to be going to this. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, Mexican president says Trump's labeling of criminal organizations as terrorists does not help. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Friday that the U.S. President Donald Trump's labeling criminal organizations as terrorists does not help to combat them. The importance of combating criminal organizations is strengthening actions and prioritizing collaboration and respect between Mexico and the United States, she said in a daily press conference. But you haven't been treating us with respect. Noting that the Mexican government does not want fentanyl to reach the United States or anywhere, all right, we are fighting these criminal organizations, which we're a part of, and what we want is collaboration to make things easier for us to ship this stuff to the United States. Sheinbaum said that the Mexican government is conducting a legal analysis to evaluate the possible implications of the executive order. Go after yourselves. These organizations have been trying to take over your country. What would you call them? They kill innocent women and children. They sit up there and anybody who's been part of your reporting mechanisms, reporters who sit up there and negatively say things about their organization get killed. And you're going to sit up there and go, but they're not terrorists. They're not terrorists. No, of course they're not terrorists. How could you make that comment? Why would you ever say that they're terrorists? How could the real question is how can you not call them terrorists? Oh, that's right, because you owe your position to them, and you're as scared of them, all right, as the other reporterettes that are running around getting whacked. Mexico's in for some really tough times, but they're not the only ones. From the Wall Street Journal, home sales in the 2024 fell to the lowest level in nearly 30 years. Existing home sales fell in 2024 to the lowest level since 1995, the second straight year of anemic sales due to stubbornly high mortgage rates. No, it's not due to stubbornly high mortgage rates. Okay? High costs related to home ownership sapped sales again. Ding, 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 ding. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage has hovered between 6 and 8% since the late 2022, making it prohibitively expensive for Americans to buy homes at current prices, which hit record highs last year. Rising home insurance and property taxes are also adding to the homeowner's expenses. Ding, 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 ding. The housing market's outlook this year depends again on mortgage rates. No, it doesn't. And this is where I disagree. The problem with home ownership is the cost of home ownership, all right, even of maintenance of your home, has gone up so fast that it's impossible, all right, to stay on top of for the vast majority of new people coming into it that are looking for homes. But there's also the fact that for the most part, the United States has become stagnant in growth, population growth. The only population growth within the United States is occurring due to unfettered illegal immigration. And guess what illegal immigrants can't afford? The cost of a home, regardless of these interest rates. Do you realize that a 6% interest rate used to be back in the 80s? That was exceptional. Homes are becoming more and more difficult. The market supposedly is in a shortage right now. So how the hell is this happening? Because the costs have skyrocketed. Why have the costs skyrocketed? It's not due, all right, to the amount of homes available, because there's a quote unquote glut available according to the fact that home sales have shrank. So if home sales have shrank, how the hell are we in a housing shortage? Why is well, my question is about MC, only old rich retirees buy homes if they want to move. That's part of the issue. There has been a significant, and this has been talked about continuously, a significant number of quote unquote people that won't leave the nest. Becoming independent and getting out of the family's household. Right? That dynamic has shrank lately. Over the past 20 years, millennials are still living with their parents in their parents' home. They're not going out and becoming independent. No, not nearly at the rates that they were before. So, all of a sudden, you have a glut, and the word is glut, of houses, all right, that are for sale. Now, I've noted this. I noted this several weeks ago, several months ago, actually, that the cost of these really high-priced homes have been going down significantly. That $115 million mansion that was expected to sell for mansion was expected to sell for $115 million is being sold for 85. Now, most people will look at that and go, well, that's just a rich and other. No, it's an indication that you're not selling. That people aren't selling. That the market has an overabundance of property. You have entire neighborhoods in the Detroit area that are sitting abandoned. The homes are being destroyed because they've been abandoned, because people can't, and nobody wants to pay the back taxes on them, so they're just sitting there in arrears. All right, entire blocks of houses, and yet we're struggling to find places to put the immigrants. We're going to put them in hotels. My nephews all have jobs and businesses, but they can't just buy an average home nowadays. I agree with you. The prices of houses have gotten out of control. We are long overdue, and I mean this. Most people don't understand this. We are long overdue. The world is long overdue for a depression brought on by government regulations and government policies. That's what's been staving this depression off, but it's coming. A worldwide depression is coming. Why do I say that so confidently? Because that's what history tells me. Okay. Definitely not a bag full of drugs. Dude, a Florida woman is jailed on narcotics charges after she was found with methamphetamine and assorted drug paraphernalia inside a bag labeled definitely not a bag full of drugs, according to the police. As reported here, an Oregon woman was arrested 3 months ago when she was found with drugs stashed inside an identical zippered pouch. Taryn Asri, I don't know how to pronounce your name, was collared Saturday following a traffic stop in Brevard County. Seen at the right, she was a passenger in a U-Haul van that was searched by cops who discovered meth, needles, digital scales, and other drug items among her belongings, which included the definitely not a bag full of drugs. Charged with possession of meth with intent to sell or deliver, a felony, and a misdemeanor paraphernalia count. Acri is locked up without bail in the county jail. She is scheduled for a February 13th arraignment. At the time of her January 18th arrest, she was free on $15,000 bond in connection with an arrest earlier this month for the possession of several baggies of meth. Oh, cops are so untrusting these days. I feel bad for okay, drug victims are drug victims, right? Um, and I say victims, but and yet, you know, people who do become addicted to drugs victimize themselves, but they're still victims. Okay, I understand the view of people, okay, who say, well, it's just themselves. And I understand other idiots who make the comment, well, this is just a victimless crime. Okay, so when the person becomes a drug addict, are they a victim or not? Okay, illicit drugs are illicit drugs. I have never been one of these people who said that all drugs should be legalized. Okay, and the reason I say that And people who try to point out, well, but we legalize alcohol. Yeah, we may legalize alcohol. But just like sex before marriage, it's a form of individual degeneracy. When you are doing something just to please yourself, all right, it's a form of degeneracy. You're not caring about anybody else. You're looking strictly out for yourself. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, there is. There is something wrong with that. All right. In the sense that if that's all you ever do, you become a detriment to society. At some point, if all you're doing is looking to seek pleasure for yourself, you are going to become, to some degree, a detriment to society because society doesn't exist for you. It's all about me, 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 I. And that can be taken in any way, shape, or form. It isn't just drugs. This is one of the reasons why people look upon, people who don't help another person or give to charities and things like that. If they're stingy and they never give to charities because they want to keep it for themselves and they want to be miserly, why society looks on them with disdain, or used to. Let me rephrase that. If you're totally greedy, me, I, at some point you become a detriment to the societal well-being. The same thing happens with drugs. And so what am I trying to say here? What I'm saying is even though you may think of it as quote unquote hypocrisy, because other people are doing this kind of drug, if these people want to do that kind of drug, they should be allowed. No, because eventually, if everybody is doing whatever the hell they want, you no longer have a society. At some point, you've got to come back and say what's acceptable and what isn't, and it has to be enforced at some point by law. Well, why does that have to be enforced by law? Because otherwise, what happens is social norms change to the point where they are today, where sex before marriage, okay, used to be disapproved of. It wasn't. It wasn't a. It wasn't something that people didn't know happened. Okay, but it was you had social disapproval. It wasn't illegal, but you had social disapproval of it. To now, not only is it socially acceptable, right? It's expected. Well, I agree. I agree with you there too, James. The effing around with it. And is society better off now because everyone accepts the fact that people are going to sleep around? I don't think society is better off because of that. So how do you fix it? Do you outlaw sex before marriage? No, you don't necessarily have to go that far. But I can tell you this: if you take a look at the history, in order to recover back to social norms, okay, you harsh legal penalties eventually have to take place in certain areas. For example, back in the at the turn of the century, you had opium dens all through London. I should turn of the century. I should be talking about the turn of the 19th century, 18, going from 1800s to 1900s. You had opium dens all over frickin' London. London and Britain eventually had to put a stop to it. Hail Hydra, come on in if you want, Sixer. They had to make it illegal. Opium had to be outlawed. These things do happen. Okay. On to the next story. U.S. Secret Service approached the Southside School, not ICE agents, say Chicago public schools officials. The U.S. Secret Service told the I-Team that they approached a Southside school Friday. Chicago public school officials had initially said that the agents were from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Secret Service said that they were investigating a threat and a response to a house. They said that they were then told the person they wanted to talk to was at the Hamline Elementary School, but they did not enter the school, the Secret Service told the I-Team. The alleged threat the Secret Service was investigating was not immediately clear. CPS officials initially claimed that at least one ICE agent was denied entry into the South Side Elementary School Friday morning. ICE said it was not a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement encounter. All right, CPS officials shared an update on the statement Friday, saying that the agents showed ID that included the name Department of Homeland Security, which oversees ICE and the Secret Service. All right, they then stood up there and said, and we were proud to do this. We're going to sit up there and stop those the evil Trumpies that are going to come in here and try and get our kids. And this is going to be this. You know, the first thing I would have sit up there and said, especially on the Secret Service, is, you lady, you either open this damn door or I'm going to kick it in. Enough of this nonsense. If this school wants to play this game, there's two ways to do it. One, you kick in the doors, and two, you say, well, then you don't need public funds, do you? Good luck getting your public funds strictly from Chicago. And I'd start ratcheting down the freaking amount of money since they don't want to cooperate. Okay, well, that's fine. You don't want this money then. It's also taxed. Black market items are not taxed. Okay. Taxed drugs does increase revenue, but never at the but it never seems to cover the cost of the disaster that it causes. For example, they were all giddy in Denver about the amount of revenue they were going to get from the taxes on sales of marijuana. And initially, the taxes that came in, all right, were a benefit. Now, however, they're spending more money trying to police this, right, and police up the detriment of what this is happening than what it costs to do this. On to the next story. Fauci. Oh, good old freaking criminal Fauci. Trump revokes security protection for COVID advisor Fauci. He's far more than just a COVID advisor. President Donald Trump revoked the security protection for former top U.S. health official Anthony Fauci, who faced death threats since leading the country's COVID-19 response. You can't have a security detail for the rest of your life because you work for the government, he told reporters when asked about his decision. It's a very standard. All right, this week, Trump also revoked the protections for his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, and former envoy, Brian Hook, who all face threats from Iran. Fauci has now hired his own private security team, and he will pay for himself, the U.S. media reports. Ding, 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 ding. Asked whether he felt responsible for the official safety, Trump said on Friday, they made a lot of money. They can hire their own security, too. And that's exactly right. Fauci was previously protected by federal marshals and then a private security company, which was paid for by the government, according to the New York Times. One of Fauci's most vocal Republican critics, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, had called for his security to be revoked. All these guys need to sit up there and start protecting their own security, especially Bolton. No, it's not. It's not a joke that Pompeo and Bolton are on the hit list from Iran. Iran would love to do this. And they probably eventually will. But these people were being given things like this, which was reported by Rand Paul. He said on X Thursday that he had sent supporting information to end the 24-hour-a-day limo and security detail for Fauci. He said I wish him nothing but peace, but he needs to pay for his own limos. Exactly. Trump also revoked the security clearances of 51 of intelligence officials who claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Under U.S. protocol, former presidents and their spouses are granted protection for life, but protection for other U.S. officials is decided upon based on a threat assessment from the intelligence community. As the former head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Fauci faced death threats during and after the COVID pandemic, as well as criticism from Republicans over mask mandates and other COVID restrictions. That's not why. It's because of gain of function that he was doing illegal shit. And of course, good old Biden couldn't wait to sit up there and make him immune from. Pay for your own crap, Mr. Science. I agree. Sex, not part of a woman's marital duties, court rules in divorce case. A French woman has won a ruling from Europe's top human rights court with a panel of 7 judges unanimously saying she should not have been blamed for her divorce for not having sex with her husband. The European Court of Human Rights judgment ruled that the woman, known as Mrs. HW in court documents in keeping with European protocols, suffered a violation of Article 8 under the European Convention of Human Rights, the respect for family and private life. The case centered on the divorce between a woman, a French national born in 1955, who lives in Chantilly, or Le Chantilly, I cannot pronounce it, all right, near Versailles, and her husband, known in the court records as Mr. J.C. In 2015, she petitioned to the Versailles High Court for divorce on grounds of fault, alleging her husband had prioritized his career over family life and had been bad-tempered and insulting. All right. The divorce was granted, all right, with a fault attributed to the woman on the basis of not having sex with her husband constituted a serious and repeated breach of marital duties and obligations, making it impossible to continue a state of matrimony, said an earlier court. She appealed the case within France, but was rejected. So what'd she do? She ran to the EU courts. I'm not at fault. I deserve to be pampered for my entire life. He's at fault for not pampering me the way I'm supposed to be pampered. Just put it out there. Black box of South Korea's crashed plane stops recording after bird strike warning. A black box of a airplane that crashed in South Korea's southwestern airport, all right, in Incheon, all right, late last month, stopped recording just a minute after a warning of a bird strike. It's about said bear strike. Bird strike. Bears flying around and taking out planes could be a problem. All right, the transport ministry said on Saturday. Right, Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transports, an Aviation Railway Accident Investigation Committee held a meeting with the bereaved families to disclose the analysis of the passenger jet's flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. The control tower warned the ill-fated plane of a possible bird strike just 1 minute before the jet's FDR and CVR stopped recording simultaneously. Immediately before the discontinued recording, the plane's power supply was believed to have been cut off, or to have cut off both of its engines as both of its engines collided with birds. Um, okay, you lose the engines, you lose electricity on the plane. That's the reality. Okay, they're especially some of these smaller passenger jets. Those engines have to be spinning. If a bird strike shut down those engines, the electricity to the plane, there are some battery backups, but they're not extensive. Okay, and there's a lot you got to understand. Batteries weigh a lot. Okay, and what's more is batteries also go bad. So if you're dealing with an older style plane, it's very possible, all right, that when they lost power, that was it. A total of 179 of the 181 people aboard the aircraft were confirmed dead. Only 2 were rescued. This thing ran off the end of the runway, all right, and hit a wall. Okay, these guys were trying to dead stick this, all right, to land. Okay, and unfortunately, they ran off the end of the runway and hit a concrete berm, basically. Right? It's unfortunate. These people died, but people tend to forget that you know air travel isn't perfect. Things still happen. Meanwhile, in Japan, lawmakers may attend the UN's nuclear ban meeting. Ishiba, all right, to skip. Lawmakers from Japan's ruling parties may attend the convention of signatories to the UN nuclear weapons ban treaty in New York this March, but no government representatives will attend, the government sources said Saturday. The Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, all right, plans to skip the event to be held ahead of the 80th anniversary of the U.S. atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki this year. The plan comes as Nihon Hikaido, Hikankayo, I can't pronounce it, all right, the Japanese Atomic Survivors Group, which won last year's Nobel Peace Prize, and the ruling Liberal Democrat Party coalition partner Komieto, all right, have urged the Prime Minister to participate in the convention as an observer. Ishiba, who became Prime Minister in October, remains cautious about participating in the third gathering of signatories to the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Japan is not a party to the international agreement, which took effect in 2021, and the government has skipped the first 2 meetings. All countries classified as nuclear weapon states under the treaty are also not a party to it. Gotta go. Okay, not a problem, James. Good luck to you, man. Nobody cares. I'm gonna real bluntly. We got a treaty. There's a treaty for these. Why are you doing it in New York? We're not assigned to it. This is just a government boondoggle. This is just a bunch of people from the government, all right, from lawmakers, all right, basically using their funding for a free trip to New York. Why is this even being held in New York? Meanwhile, in New York, Governor Hochul wants to gift billions to Hollywood in subsidies that rip off taxpayers. A state program that delivers little for taxpayers but doles out hefty subsidies to Hollywood to film shows like Billions and Blue Bloods in New York would be extended and pay out $100 million more yearly through Governor Kathy Hochul's new budget proposal. The film production tax credit program's yearly cap would increase from $700 million to $800 million under Hochul's $252 billion state spending plan, with the extra cash marked for independent films. She wants to extend the program another 2 years. It's a move that a watchdog group, Reinvent Albany, estimates would cost the taxpayers another $1.8 billion and raise its overall price tag over a 13-year period to $9.5 billion. It's nauseating that Governor Hochul proposes flushing state tax dollars down to the film and TV production pay-to-play toilet, said John Kanani, the group's executive director. In an independent analysis of the financial advisory firm PFM Group found that the credit program only returns 31 cents on the dollar in revenues to state taxpayers. Is it just me? Is it just me, or does this sound like an opportunity if you live in New York to say, hey, I'm making a film. Can you give me $1 million? I'd say write a script, get some of your buddies, take your iPhone out there, start putting some films out there. Say you're going to put it to, it's going to be released to YouTube. Oh, the budget ballooned a little bit. The budget, the script writing costs a lot more now, so we're going to have to do it. Yeah, this might be worth looking into. You're talking about government waste program. Oh, my God. Well, I do have a few movie ideas. Good on you, Matt. Off to the British side of the house, a teenage boy was arrested under Terrorism Act outside of a mosque. Officers said there's nothing to suggest that anyone was involved or that there is any further risk to the public. A teenage boy has been arrested outside a mosque in connection with terrorism offenses as detectives investigate potential links to right-wing extremism. Police cordoned off Laird Street, however you say it, or in Greenock, I guess is how you would say it, after 9 a.m. Thursday, where a 16-year-old male youth was arrested outside the Innerclyde Islamic Center. The boy is understood to be a white Scottish youth with no known links to the mosque. The STV News understands police are investigating possible links to right-wing extremism. Officers said there's nothing to suggest that anyone else was involved or that there are any further risk to the public. The youth remains in custody and inquiries are ongoing. Assistant Chief Constable Andy Freeburn said shortly after 9 a.m. Thursday on January 23rd, 2025, a 16-year-old male was arrested outside the Inverclyde Islamic Center, right, in connection with offenses under the Terrorism Act. The youth remains in custody and inquiries continue. There's nothing to suggest that anyone else was involved, and there's no further risk to the public. We are speaking to members of the local community to provide reassurance, and I would urge anyone with information or who has any concerns to please come forward and speak to the officers. Can you tell us why he was arrested? What offenses, what terrorism offenses under the Terrorism Act you found? Or that you suspect? I'm just curious to know why you arrested a 16-year-old. Was he making threats? I'm not saying it's not possible. It's possible. Trans people versus cannibals paper. Meanwhile, when we talk about degeneracy, even in Key West, you will get arrested for having sex on a public sidewalk. These are just freaks, folks. Even in Key West, where some louche behavior is tolerated, you are going to get arrested for having sex at 4:20 a.m. on a sidewalk adjacent to a main road through town. Early Tuesday morning, cops were driving on a two-lane stretch of U.S. Route 1 when they spotted a woman bent in front of a man who was thrusting his hips back and forth while the couple situated in front of a pet grooming business. The two suspects continued intercourse until I activated the emergency lights, said Officer Bryce Soshian. In the glow of the cruiser's cherry top, William Janot, 41, put his penis back inside his pants while Diane Clausen, 38, pulled down her dress. All right, was disheveled with her bodysuit undone. Ginan and Clausen were subsequently arrested for committing lascivious acts with another person in a public place. The duo was booked into the Monroe County Jail on misdemeanor charge and later released, while the court and police records list Gino's residence as Whitehall, Michigan. All right, he recently began a job with a Key West yacht company, according to a post on his Facebook page. Clausen, who works as a server in Key West, lives in a nearby Stock Island, and is a licensed esthetician or facial specialist. I'm just gonna leave that there, folks. I'm just gonna leave that there. How about a movie where the state gives me $50 million and I buy a town and build a nice cabin and live happily? That's nice ending. How about what you do? You do a story about some idiots. I'm not sure what kind of facials they mean, considering the context there. I'm leaving it there. Two stories left. Two stories left. Uh, just. All right. Deer rescued from frigid waters of the Potomac River. Animal rescuers in D.C. Teamed up with police and firefighters to rescue a deer stranded in the icy Potomac River. I thought that thing didn't freeze anymore. I thought global warming had ended the freezing of the Delaware and the Potomac rivers. The Brandywine Valley Society for the Protection of Animals, said on a social media that multiple calls came in about a deer in a frigid river near Key Bridge. The Washington Metropolitan Police Department's Harbor Patrol and the DC Fire and EMS fireboat crews were called to help with rescuers using a hovercraft boat to reach the stranded deer. With cold temperatures and icy conditions making the rescue tricky, the dedicated team of heroes worked together to safely bring the deer to solid ground where it got its footing and ran off. It's amazing how much more they do to save a freaking deer in a river, right? An animal that has existed and exists on their own years after years and decades after decades for hundreds of years. But saving human beings is a different story on the other hand. In California, they just watch the places burn. Final story of the day. Final story. Drug-addicted rats destroying evidence in Houston police lockers. Police and city officials in Houston said evidence in a storage locker is being destroyed by drug-addicted rats. Mayor John Whitmer said in a news conference that drugs being stored in the evidence lockers are attracting rats that feast on the illicit narcotics and cause damage to other evidence in the process. We've got 400,000 pounds of marijuana in storage that the rats were the only ones enjoying. Whitmer, a mayor, the mayor has a problem. The mayor announced that the start of an initiative in a partnership with the Harris County District Attorney's Office to organize the 1.2 million pieces of evidence stored by the city and discard any drugs stored since before 2015. So much evidence is kept and stored that it's no longer needed. That has no impact on the resolution of that charge, that the conviction, or even the innocence. Peter Stout, the head of the Houston Forensic Science Center, said in the same news conference that the large amounts of narcotics evidence stored by the city is putting other unrelated evidence in danger. They're edible, they're tasty, and there's all kinds of things. You can't store large quantities of drugs without expecting some of these things to happen, Stout said. He said the police have hired exterminators, but the rodent problem has proved persistent. They're drug-addicted rats. They're tough to deal with. Oh my goodness! I've got a solution. If you really want one, if you're really interested in a solution, I've got one. All right, it involves using drug addicts. I'm just telling you. I can think of several solutions. Oh my god. The rats are eating our marijuana. They're all high. Don't you love how he says our marijuana? Police Superintendent Ed Kirkpatrick said in a meeting of the City Council's Criminal Justice Committee, my dope is being eaten by the rats. Can't make this stuff up, folks. You just cannot make this stuff up. There's a story for you, Matt. Mr. Broccoli, you want a movie idea? There's one for you. Just put it out there. All right, folks, that's all I got for the day. Thanks for coming out. I hope you all enjoyed the day. Thanks for listening. Hope you all have a good day, and I will talk to you all later. Enjoy. Bye bye, everybody.